The man with a $10 million bounty on his head and the designation of global terrorist is expected to walk free today. Lashkar-e-Taiba founder Hafiz Saeed, blamed for the 2008 Mumbai attack, had been placed under house arrest in the eastern city of Lahore in January by the provincial government under anti-terrorism laws. On Wednesday, a judicial review body of the Lahore High Court has rejected to renew his detention for a further 90 days. The United States has condemned Pakistan for allowing Mumbai attack mastermind to walk free, saying that Hafiz Saeed is a terrorist leader designated both by the United Nations and by the US. The banned Jamaat-ud-Dawa head carries a bounty of US $10 million announced by the US for his role in terror activities. Switzerland has rejected the request of the exiled leader of the banned Baloch Republican Party, Bramdak Bukti, for political asylum. Bukti tweeted that the Swiss authorities had turned down his request after many years. Pakistan had been campaigning against the Baloch leader, and Swiss immigration authorities had been sitting on the application. Bukti had reportedly sought asylum in India last year. Toughening its stance on Myanmar's Rohingya crisis, the United States has accused the country's security forces of perpetrating horrendous atrocities against the Rohingya that amount to ethnic cleansing of the Muslim minority group. The statement from Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who visited Myanmar last week, is the strongest U.S. condemnation yet of the military's crackdown against the Rohingya, which has triggered a major refugee crisis and escalated global outrage. Meanwhile, Myanmar and Bangladeshi senior officials joined a bilateral meeting in the Myanmar's capital of Naypyidaw. The officials discussed the process of repatriating Rohingya people who have been fleeing violence in the Rakhine state since August. Myanmar leader Aung San Suu Kyi had earlier said that Myanmar would follow the framework of an agreement reached in the 1990s to cover the earlier repatriation of the Rohingya who fled to Bangladesh to escape previous bouts of ethnic violence. However, the agreement did not address the citizenship status of the Rohingya, and Bangladesh has been pressing for a repatriation process that provided Rohingya with more safeguards this time. Rival Palestinian factions Fatah and Hamas in Cairo have agreed to hold the general Palestinian elections by the end of 2018. The factions also authorized the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to set a date for the elections. The deal was announced by the head of the Fatah delegation, Azam al-Ahmad. Negotiators have been meeting for 2 days now on the implementation of further steps towards unity. Fatah, which controls the West Bank, lost control of Gaza to Hamas in the fighting in 2007, but last month, Hamas agreed to cede powers in Gaza to President Mahmoud Abbas's led Fatah government, known as the Palestinian Authority, in a deal that was mediated by Egypt. Russia has denied reports of an incident at any of its nuclear facilities after the country's weather service reported radioactive pollution that exceeded background levels by 986 times. A station close to the Mayak nuclear facility detected extremely high pollution of the radioactive isotope Ru-106. But a representative of Rosatom Nuclear Cooperation has denied that any such incident took place, adding that the concentration detected posed little threat. Zimbabwe's former Vice President Emerson Mnangagwa returned to the capital Harare to a warm welcome 2 days ahead of a scheduled sworn-in ceremony as the country's president. The incoming president thanked the people for their trust and support, and also pledged his service to the people and urged all Zimbabweans to contribute to reviving the economy and creating jobs. He has also praised the military's actions that led to the 37 years of Mugabe's era to come to an end. Before his return to Zimbabwe, Emmerson Mnangagwa met with South African President Jacob Zuma in Pretoria. Mnangagwa has been nominated by the ruling ZANU-PF party to fill the vacancy left by Robert Mugabe. He was earlier sacked by Mugabe and had fled Zimbabwe for his own safety, but has returned to Harare this week. A German political art group built a version of Berlin's Holocaust Memorial near the home of a far-right politician. A senior member of the Anti-Immigrant Alternative for Germany party has sparked outrage by criticizing the Holocaust Memorial in Berlin, calling it a monument of shame. His comment had sparked a major controversy, after which a Berlin-based art group unveiled a copy of the memorial near the politician's house as a protest. Argentina's Navy has said that it is investigating a noise detected in the South Atlantic hours after it last communicated with a missing submarine and its 44-member crew. The officials claim that a sound was detected in the ocean almost 3 hours after the last communication with the San Juan on November 15th, 30 miles north of its last known position. The search for an Argentine Navy submarine missing has reached a critical phase on Wednesday. Navy officials said that the 44 crew on board could be running low on oxygen, and it has been a week since the submarine went missing in the South Atlantic. Despite extensive research, there has been no clue sign of the submarine. Lebanon's Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri has agreed to suspend his resignation after a meeting with the country's president on Wednesday. Hariri, who returned to Lebanon on Tuesday, held talks with the president at the presidential palace. And after the meeting, the Prime Minister announced that he has agreed to reserve his resignation for further dialogue about its reasons and political background. He also expressed hope for a serious and responsible dialogue to solve disputes among concerning parties. The Chinese foreign minister held bilateral talks with his South Korean counterpart in Beijing. Dispute over the deployment of a U.S. anti-missile system in South Korea was one of the top issues of the discussion. The installation of the U.S. STAR system had angered China, which fears its powerful radar could look deep into China and threaten its own security. French President Emmanuel Macron has urged the UN Security Council should consider sanctions on Libya if authorities do not take action over human trafficking in the country. Macron, while calling it crimes against humanity, has said that he wants the Council to discuss what concrete steps could be taken to tackle the issue. Thousands of migrants who have come to Libya have been victims of human trafficking in the country. Former Bosnian Serb army leader Ratko Mladic was sentenced to life in prison on Wednesday after being found guilty of genocide for atrocities committed during the Bosnian War from 1992 to 1995. Mladic was charged with 2 counts of genocide, 9 crimes against humanity, and war crimes for his role in the conflict in the former Yugoslavia, during which 100,000 people were killed and another 2.2 million were displaced. He was found not guilty on 1 charge of genocide, but received a guilty verdict on each of the other 10 counts. As victims express satisfaction over the conviction of Ratko Mladic, the former Bosnian Serb military leader will appeal against his convictions. His lawyers have said that they will argue that the Serb community were the victims of suppression and went to war in self-defense. Amnesty International claims that the conflict continues in Colombia despite the peace deal signed between the government and the Marxist FARC rebels. the human rights organization claimed that the crimes under international law and gross human rights violations continue to be faced by large parts of the population. Large areas of the jungle and mountains once under the FARC control are still lacking state presence. Russian President Vladimir Putin won the backing of Turkey and Iran to host a Syrian Peace Congress, taking the central role in a major diplomatic push to finally end a civil war. In a joint statement, the three leaders called on the Syrian government and moderate opposition to participate constructively in the planned Congress, which will be held in the same city on a date that has not been specified yet. Putin said a new stage had been reached in the Syrian crisis, but achieving a political solution would require compromise from all the sides, including the Syrian government. North Korea, which is facing international pressure to seize its nuclear weapons and missile programs, has found support from Cuba. Cuban Foreign Minister met with his Cuban counterpart Bruno Rodriguez in Havana. In the wake of President Trump's declaration of North Korea as a state sponsor of terror on Monday, Rodriguez urged the Trump administration to hold talks with Pyongyang to end the crisis. He said Cuba is in favor of peace and stability, adding that only after dialogue and negotiations can a lasting political solution be achieved on the crisis. And now let's take a look at some national stories. Indian superstar Rajinikanth will not be joining politics anytime soon. While addressing the media in Chennai, he said that there was no pressing need for him to join politics at this moment. The 66-year-old star had in recent times hinted at the possibility of joining the political scenario, but had not announced any concrete plans. The first batch of female officers were inducted into the Indian Navy on Wednesday. Shakti Mein AS, Rupa and Asta Sehgal are the first women officers to join the Naval Armaments Inspectorate. Another cadet, Shubhangi Swaroop, is going to be the first woman pilot in the Navy. Indian lawyer Afroz Shah, the man behind the world's largest beach cleanup drive at Mumbai's Versova beach, has suspended it amid alleged threats and abuses by local goons. The drive was launched by Shah in October 2015, and he, along with hundreds of volunteers, gave the beach a major facelift over 2 years. However, since July, thousands of kilograms of garbage has been piling up at the beach, with the civic body not collecting it. Afroz Shah has said that people have been heckling the volunteers and asking them to leave the beach. An Indian army soldier was martyred and a terrorist was neutralized in an encounter that broke out in the Kiran sector of Kupwara district. Indian army soldiers were patrolling near Chunkan post in Kiran sector when they came under a barrage of fire from terrorists. Sources say there could be more injuries to the soldiers. Meanwhile, additional reinforcements of the army's paratroopers have been rushed to the firing spot, and massive searches have been conducted in the area. In badminton, 3 Indians remain in contention at the Hong Kong Open Super Series, and PV Sindhu will be leading the contingent charge in second round action today. The Olympic and World Championship silver medalist eased past local hopeful Leung Yut Yi on Wednesday and now faces Japanese world number 14 Aya Ohori. It's a tougher draw, however, for Saina Nehwal, as the World Championship bronze medalist is pitted against Chinese 8th seed Chen Yufei. Nehwal was given a run for her money in her Hong Kong opener by world number 44 Mette Paulsen, but she won 21-19, 23-21 to keep alive her hopes of qualifying for the year-end World Super Series finals in Dubai. In the men's singles, H.S. Pranoy is the last Indian standing after his compatriot Parupalli Kashyap and Saurabh Verma crashed out in the opening round. Pranoy too is attempting a last-ditch run towards the World Super Series finals after beating Hong Kong's WION. He now takes on Japan's Kazumasa Sakai in the pre-quarters. Former U.S. Olympic gymnastics sports doctor Larry Nassar has pleaded guilty to 7 charges of sexual assault against women and girls in his care. He has been charged with first-degree criminal sexual conduct, and each of the 7 counts carry a minimum sentence of 25 years in prison. The hearing comes after a third former U.S. Olympian, Gabby Douglas, accused him of sexual abuse. U.S. President Donald Trump has reignited the row over the national anthem protests by warning the NFL commissioner to, quote, get tough and smart, unquote, against players taking the knee, after reports that some team owners were considering keeping the players in the locker room during the anthem to avoid controversy. President Trump tweeted that the idea was almost as bad as kneeling. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell had written to team owners last month, stating that the Take the Knee movement threatened to erode the game's unifying power. The International Olympic Committee has banned 4 Russian skeleton athletes for doping at the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi. Gold medalist Alexander Tretiakov and bronze medalist Elena Nikitina are among the athletes banned from competing at any future Olympic competitions, and their medals have been stripped off. The IOC will decide next month on whether to allow Russian athletes to participate at the 2018 Winter Olympics in Pyongyang.